very powerful, successful story because of the fact that you have these influencers that are talking about your brand or service, and because they've either used a product or they are endorsing a product or anything like that. And we'll kind of go deeper into that about like what those different things can look like. And they're saying right now 92% of marketers who leverage influencer marketing, this was in 2017, found it to be very effective. The thing is, influencer marketing has gotten a little more difficult because it's become more popular, right? So I think people are more kind of hip to it and kind of like, hey, is this person really endorsing a great product and service, or are they just doing this for the money? And so I think that's where authenticity is something that we talk about that comes into play. But influencer marketing isn't going to work. I can tell you that from the campaigns that we put on. A lot of people, once again, it's no different than SEO. And SEO, when I did SEO 15 years ago, it was a lot more difficult. Now it's or it's a lot easier, excuse me. And now it's actually, people think it's more difficult, but actually the thing is we have softwares and stuff like that. It actually can become, once again, as long as you leverage those softwares correctly, things can be very beneficial. It's the same thing with influencer marketing. It is evolving. And once again, influencer marketing is not going to be just something that you go and do. That's the only thing in your tool belt, right? It's a piece, it's something on your tool belt in regards to all the different marketing things that you should do. But influencer marketing shouldn't be the only thing you do. Once again, it's a tool that you use. So some good influencer marketing examples, ones that I've used over the years, it really kind of started off, we hear like Tupperware, right? And so Tupperware was kind of an original kind of word of mouth type of product, right? So the idea was you would have, Helen that would have these Tupperware parties, and everybody wanted to be like Helen because she was cute and her kids were beautiful and all this perfect, had a perfect husband, blah, 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 right? And so what Helen would do is have everybody over and say, hey, let's, have some drinks or let's hang out. And the thing is we have this thing called the Tupperware party. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys how we use these, how I use it for my family. And then everybody goes, oh my God, Helen's so perfect. She's great. And we want to go buy this Tupperware, and Helen makes a percentage of sales, right? So this is kind of one of the original influencer marketing. Helen has influence over the community. People want to be like her, and then they go and buy her product or buy, somebody else's product because she recommends it. So influencer marketing, I would say in the last probably 10 years, Beats by Dre was a really great example of that. Beats by Dre did a phenomenal job of handing out, they would give out free product to a lot of the athletes, and they had, paid endorsements as well. But you would see all the athletes that would come off their buses, or they would be, throwing the football, they'd be doing some things. And then what you would see through all that is you would see the Beats by Dre. And so people would see that people were listening and using the Beats by Dre for everything, right? Whether it be you're an athlete, whether you're a DJ, anything like that. So there was a lot of endorsements that were going on. And a lot of people, a lot of, same headphone companies and other companies have looked to emulate that, right? The idea of having these celebrities go and endorse your product. And I think that's kind of evolved over time as well. So part one, talking about optimizing the ROI for your influencer marketing. How to set your influencer marketing campaigns up for success. So number one is to know your audience. Number two is what we talked about, choose the right influencers. Number three is use a warm outreach. And number four is going to be build relationships. So let's jump into this. So did you know, one of the biggest things is, why do you need to know your audience? Like what's the point of that? It sounds pretty self-explanatory to some, but some people are like, oh, well, what's the point? Well, the thing is if you don't know your audience, this is with anything you do when it comes to marketing. If you don't know who your audience is, then how are you going to be able to sell them something, right? If you don't figure out who your audience is and their pain point, then what's the point? So if they say 76% of consumers expect businesses to understand their needs and expectations. So that's the thing, is if you don't know who you should be selling this to, how can you go partner with an influencer and expect for them to know who they should be selling the product to or service to? So one of the things is, in regards to knowing the audience, you want to make sure it's easier to find relevant influencers, right? Because the thing is once you know your audience and you say, okay, my audience is, women between 18 and 24, they're going to, drive this kind of car, they're going to be doing these types of things, then we can go and say, okay, now with software these days, you can go in and say, okay, like with this influencer, they have, it's a heavy female audience. They have this, they have that. Okay, that fits within where we think we should be selling our product. So it's helpful to know that from the beginning. And then it helps you understand which channels to use for your campaigns, right? There's obviously a lot of different channels. There's Instagram, there's YouTube, there's Snapchat, there's Facebook. There's a lot of, there's blogging. There's a lot of different channels to use. And so your question is always going to be, where do I think that audience is going to hang out the most, right? If it's a younger demographic, is it a lifestyle type product? If it is, then maybe Instagram's a good fit. Is it more of a visually type thing where YouTube is going to make more sense? That's what you have to make that evaluation as a brand, and then also with the influencers when you're working and putting those campaigns together. And then it'll kind of help you decide what kind of content you choose to co-create. That's what I was kind of touching on there. Once again, if it's a very visual type product, then YouTube probably makes more sense. You can still use Instagram stories as well, or you can use Instagram. You can put videos on there as well. So, it's coming up with that collaborative plan and saying, hey, this is the kind of content that my audience loves, and how does that fit with your brand? And having that conversation is very important. We don't ever want to we don't ever want to give an influencer, and we give them a brief to be able to have an idea of what they should be putting together, but we want them to come up with their own creative ideas, because the whole idea you reach out to that influencer is because you saw the content that they were producing. And so once again, you don't want to give them too tight of guidelines, and so that they're not giving you exactly the kind of content that you think is going to resonate with their audience and is be good for your brand. So to know your audience, and then how do you find out? It's like, where do you go online? Where are these conversations happening about your brand or your industry? Where are they taking place, right? So once again, that goes into, is there forums? Are there other places where, once again, this is my perfect audience, this is my perfect potential customer or client, and where are they spending their time, right? What platforms are they spending their time on? And then what motivates your audience or their audience to be able to share your content, right? So if you have something that's funny, or you have something that's kind of gimmicky, or something that you think people would like to share, that's kind of always a goal as well, right? You have to produce that content and then tell that audience what you want them to do. Like, hey, maybe it's a contest. Hey, if you share this, or if you go and like us here, you do this here, this is what we're going to get out of this. It's a $500 Amazon gift card, or whatever that is. And then what is your audience most passionate about? Like, where are their interests, right? And these are all things that tie into, hey, once you know who your perfect audience is, now you need to figure out, like, hey, what are they passionate about? What are their interests? And once again, where are they spending their time? So when choosing the right influencers, we do, for us on our side, we go through like a qualitative and quantitative analysis of influence. So some of the things that we look at on how to measure influence from a qualitative perspective is relevance, right? That's going to be really important. Relevance is important for anything you do, right? If you have a product or a service that you're giving to an influencer, that you guys are working together, if their audience, it isn't relevant to their audience, and what's the point? Why even do that, right? You're going to be wasting your time. The audience of the influencer is going to be like, why would John, try to sell us this product or talk about this product when it has nothing to do with the reason we follow him or her? Authenticity is important. It's always up for debate what's being authentic, what's not being authentic. But I think it's important that a brand or service that you're working with, or the influencer you're working with, that they're authentic, that it makes sense for them to promote your product or service, and that there's a good fit there. Aesthetics obviously is important, and then resonance, right? Once again, does it resonate with their audience? Does it make sense to be able to do the campaign? And then from a quantitative measure of influence, we're looking at reach, right? Like, how many eyeballs are we getting on that? One thing you do have to think about, though, is just because an influencer has a huge following, and maybe your reach might be a little larger, that doesn't mean that it's the perfect influencer for you. I get a lot of people that will say, hey, listen, I'm looking, if you're just looking for reach, then that's one thing. But the other side of this is, engagement is also important, right? You want to see how many people are resonating with the content that was being shared, and if they're writing comments, if they're asking the right types of questions, or if they're not happy about the content and they're writing negative stuff. So, there's, once again, social media is awesome. It can either take a great turn where things are going beautiful, or it could take a turn and you're like, wow, this didn't go that as well. I was hoping it was going to go better, right? And going to obviously take a look at that. Domain authority being another one for numbers, right? So if you have a blogger that's writing something, myself as an example, when I write articles for just about any keyword, we can get #1 for those keywords. And the reason why that is because I have a high domain authority. Google has put me high up there in the rankings. And so, they know whenever I put out content, it's going to be great content. So domain authority is also important, something to take a look at, because, blog posts, if I put up an Instagram post, eventually that gets pushed down by their content. With the domain authority, if you get #1 for a keyword, that thing can continue to produce revenue, or at least interest for you for a long period of time. And then blog traffic, once again, same thing with influencers. Blog traffic's important. If you have a site that gets 1 million people, that's awesome. I would much rather have a site that gets 100,000 of the right people. So blog traffic is something you look at, but once again, you want to make sure, don't always get fooled by, they get 5 million people that come through, but there are 10 main keywords that they use, or keywords that aren't relevant to what your product and service is. Also use a warm outreach. So, with these influencers, because, if they're a good influencer and they produce great content, they're probably getting pitched 5, 10, 15, 20 times a week. And if they've worked with some big brands, they're definitely getting pitched that much. So they always have to kind of filter through who they should work with. So when I'm doing an email out to an influencer, I customize it. And you'll see kind of down below this slide, we do about a 70% template and 30% customization is a winning combination for us. So it doesn't have to be exactly that, but the idea is you have a template that you use, but you're going to say, hey, John, this is XYZ product. I see that you're, a yoga instructor. Hey, by the way, congratulations on your new baby. Congratulations on getting married. Congratulations on your anniversary. Whatever that is, right? You want to show that like you've looked into them and you want to explain why they're going to be a good fit for your brand. Once again, do the research, let them know that you've put some time to this. You're not sending out a templated email to 10,000 people and just hoping that somebody responds. So that's discovering the common interests and synergies. Follow and engage with their content regularly, right? So you're liking posts and you're commenting, and once again, you want to get them to see you. Once again, see that you're engaging with their content, and then as I talked about, personalizing your message, right? That goes back to the, you can have some kind of a template that you use, but make sure you're customizing it, at least 30% of it. Once again, to make sure that they understand that you've looked at their content and looked at them and understand the reason why it could be potentially a good fit. So components of an effective outreach email. So, a catchy subject line is great for anything, right? Whether it becomes a newsletter, anything like that, you want to get people to be able to click on things. And, when you look at mobile, there's only so many things that people are going to be able to see on their phone. So a catchy subject line is going to make it whether somebody opens up your email or not. So when you're sending something to an influencer, something like influencer campaign, is probably not going to be that exciting, right? You want to figure out something that's going to get somebody to click on it. Like, hey, John, this is something I don't think your people can live without, right? And it's like, what do you mean what my people can't live without, or my followers can't live without? Like, what are you talking about? Then they click on it, they take a look, and then you have a very clear offer of what you're looking to do. Let's get appreciation of their past work, explaining the email. Hey, I saw that you worked with, Adidas and you guys did this campaign. I thought that was awesome. We're looking to do something similar, but we want to change things up a little bit. And this is why I think you would be a good fit. Explain why you're reaching out. Once again, maybe it's, because of the past campaigns that they've done in the past, the content they produce, and explain why you'd be a good fit. And then you got to explain what's in it for them, right? You have to, this is not only with influencer marketing, this is just with clients. Like if you just talk about you all day long, it gets, I get pitched all the time about people, hey, Shane, will you include me in your blog post? And hey, Shane, will you do this? Very seldomly does somebody say, hey, will you include me in your blog post? And I would also like to include you in my expert roundup, or I would like to include you in my video series, or whatever that is. Of course, everybody has their hand out, and there becomes a point when it's like, okay, you've got your hand out, but kind of what's in it for me? Like, I understand this is it's good for you. You want to leverage my audience, but how are you going to make this a win-win? So I think that's a very, very important thing when you're pitching this. If you have an influencer that comes out with super epic content and you're like, oh, I love your content, and you sell a $10 t-shirt and you offer them one free $10 t-shirt, but you want them to spend 8 hours on producing this great epic content, this interactive media that you're putting online, there's a disconnect there, right? Nobody's going to care about your $10 shirt if they have production people and video people that it's going to cost them $5,000 to $10,000 or whatever the number is to be able to produce that. And then a clear call to action is important as well as we go through this. Building relationships with influencers, as I've touched on a little bit in the last slide, make sure it's a win-win proposal, right? What's in it for both sides. Offer fair compensation. Don't just do the free $10 t-shirt. And once again, I'm not saying that some people won't do things for a free $10 t-shirt. But if you have an influencer that works with Adidas and Nike and works with all these big brands, I don't think a free $10 t-shirt is going to move the needle for them. Maybe it will, but for the most part, probably won't. Communicate your goals clearly, provide creative freedom. I touched on it a little earlier. Don't restrict them. You want to say, listen, if you love their content, let them come up with some ideas. Not saying that it shouldn't be a cooperative effort between both sides. What the brief will give you some guidelines of what you want, what you should include and not include. But the idea of this is to make sure that you have set milestones, you set up little things that you can check in between in regards to content and ideas. And then, they'll have this share, the freebies and gifts are always fun, right? Followers always like to get free gifts and stuff like that, and do some kind of a contest. Introduce them to your network. Once again, that's a win-win situation. Hey, you're not only going to talk about my product here, but we're also going to take the pictures that you did on social media. We're going to put on a flyer. We're going to put on our website. We're going to show social proof. There's benefits. Once again, that makes it a win-win. And then keep in touch with the influencer after the campaign. You obviously want to get reporting and find out like, hey, what went well, what didn't go well? Did the content resonate with your audience? Like what kind of clicks did happen there? There's a lot of different ways to take a look at that, but you can't expect that every campaign you do is going to crush it, but every campaign that you do, you will learn something. And you'll be able to either tighten up things with that influencer and say, hey, let's try some different content, or say, hey, we've done 2 or 3 campaigns. I don't think you're the right fit for us. Nothing personal. We can move on and let's find somebody else. But remember, It's not, the same thing with PPC, the same thing with SEO. I mean, just because you go after a certain audience in PPC doesn't mean that first campaign is going to crush it, right? Maybe it does. The same thing with influencer marketing. You got to test things and see what happens. So measuring the ROI of an influencer marketing. So this is kind of a big one. There was, I think, influencer marketing is, people have been doing it for a little while, and they're learning as you go through this. And one of the big things now, a lot of the bigger companies are saying, hey, we're doing influencer marketing, but like, what's the ROI? Like, how, are we making any money from this, right? And you have to figure out how to be able to do that. You have to be able to say, hey, we're spending 100,000 and we're making 200,000, or we're spending 100,000, we've learned a lot and we've only made 80,000, but we're really getting to the point where we're understanding who our audience is and the types of influencers we want to work with. So why is it important to measure ROI? Well, it's pretty simple. No measurement of ROI, which is ROI equals return on investment, equals inefficient use of budget and resources, which is an issue, right? And then inefficient use of budget and resources equals a failed campaign. So that's the thing, is if you're not setting up goals with an influencer, if you're not going in and saying, hey, this is what I want to get out of this campaign, right? I want to spend, and this is important for influencers as well. If a brand says, I want to spend $10,000 on a campaign, but I want to make 100, you as an influencer have to go, do I think that's realistic? For every dollar that they spend, that they're going to make $10. And that expectation is really important from the beginning, to be able to talk to the influencer and talk to the brands and say, hey, do we think this is realistic, right? And if it's not realistic, then you have to either make sure that you guys are on the same page when it comes to expectation, but that will all be done when you're setting up the KPIs, which is key performance indicators. Like, are you looking for a reach? Are you looking for sales? Are you looking for, like, what are you looking for? More sentiment online, like more positive sentiment online? You're looking for it to go viral. Like, what is the goal of this, right? I mean, viral is a whole nother conversation. If you say you want something to go viral, the odds of that are pretty low, right? But if that is your goal and you have the right budget and you have the right PR plan, then maybe it can happen. So did you know, like, you look at the top influencer marketing challenges. This was in 2018. Obviously, we're going to come out with a new list for 2019. But one of the biggest things was, and you'll see 76% was determining the ROI of your influencer marketing programs, right? And how do you do that? We're going to go into that today and kind of talk to you about why that is. And some of the other challenges you can see here is, choosing which influencer marketing providers to work with influencers. And we're going to go over some of that stuff, the FTC stuff a little bit today. But really the big thing we're going to talk about is ROI, and how do you make sure that you're getting some type of ROI on your campaigns that you guys are doing. So why is it difficult to measure ROI of influencer marketing, right? Like, what's the big deal? I mean, the end goal of influencer marketing is to evoke action by building relationships with your targeted audience. But like, how do you measure a relationship, right? So Gary Vaynerchuk used to say, like, how do you measure the ROI of your mother, right? Because that's a relationship, right? Like, how do you say, hey, like, I think my mother has brought me, 80% happiness in my life, right? It's sometimes difficult. Well, it is difficult to do. And so what we have to look at from an influencer standpoint is, when you work with influencers, once again, what are those key performance indicators, and how are we going to indicate whether we made it to the finish line or not? Well, it's pretty simple, and we're going to go over today. So really it comes down to goals and KPI. So goal setting to answer questions like, these are some of the questions that you want to answer when it comes to putting together your campaign. After the campaign's done, like, did my campaign or did my influencer campaign work, right? And once again, if you have these KPIs or these goals in mind, you will know whether it worked or not, because whether you hit the goal or not. Should we try a different type of influencer, right? So is it maybe we went after the male demographic, we should go after the female demographic, or maybe this is a US-based product and, we went after these people, but they had 50% of their following was in the UK or something like that. These are all, there's great softwares out there now that you can go and take a look at the demographics informations of the breakdowns of these influencers and figure out where you think, once again, which ones you think you should use. What about maybe a different medium? I mean, we've had clients that we've said, hey, we think this is a great Instagram play. We've done campaigns and then it wasn't. And then it did okay on Instagram, but really where they made their leverage was on YouTube, because it's, we were able to put keywords in there and it indexed well with YouTube. And then we were able to get, once again, that thing continues to produce because that YouTube video is always out there. So that's another thing you have to look at too. Is it going to be permanent content or not content? So influencer campaigns today, back in the day, you would just put a post up, you'd either make money or not make money, whatever your KPIs were. And then what would happen is what we're looking at these days is you really now you want to take that content, as I touched on earlier, you want to put that on your website. You want to do social proof. You want to run some ads to it. Your dollar needs to go further on your influencer marketing campaigns. And the way to do that is to, once again, to go and do some kind of PPC, do something further than just putting up a campaign with an influencer. It really needs to be multiple touch points as well. What I mean by that is the frequency. So if you have an influencer, you do one deal with them, they only put out one, Facebook ad or something, or not Facebook ad, they put up one Facebook post or one Instagram post, usually that's not going to move the needle. So the idea of it's a frequency deal, right? So, when we see a billboard that says Pepsi and we see, this says Pepsi and we see a commercial that says Pepsi and then all of a sudden we want a Pepsi. It's the same deal. Influencer marketing is no different. It's a frequency deal. So don't think by just putting one picture up or one Instagram story or maybe even one video that it's going to move the needle. And then you need to change up what type of content, right? Is it video? Is it just a picture? There's a lot of different ways to produce content. And then once again, that content you produce, can you cut that up? If I did a long video on YouTube, now I can cut that up and put it on Instagram stories. I can also put it maybe on a blog post, or I can have somebody write out the blog post from the YouTube video. Like there's a lot of different ways to produce content from one piece of content. So every goal needs to be, this is what you need to do. It's what we call SMART goals. It needs to be specific, needs to be measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound. So these are all things you have to think about. When you're setting a goal, it needs to be very specific on what you're looking for. It needs to be measurable. Like, how will I know if I made it to the finish line? If I'm running a marathon and I'm running for 26.2 miles, if they didn't tell me when the end of the marathon was at the 26.2 miles, how would I know what I was be done? Right? You don't. So the idea of that is there's something you have to be able to measure. Achievable, once again, if somebody says, hey, I want to make $100,000 off a $10,000 commitment, is that achievable? Do we both think that's possible? Results oriented, obviously, and then time bound. If I want to run my marathon and I want to, my goal is to get there, run it within 2 hours, right? So 26.2 miles in 2 hours, that's time bound, right? If you go, I just want to, do this marathon. And if I get to the end, I don't know, maybe in a day or two, that would be cool. I don't know, just whenever I finish. That's not time bound, right? You need to have a timeline on it so we all know, hey, this is what we're doing. It's very specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, results oriented, and time bound. Really very, very, very important when it comes to goals. So examples of influencer marketing goals. So you can boost your brand awareness, right, online. So there's a lot of softwares out there, and we'll talk about that a little further, softwares that you can use to take a look at sentiment and boost the awareness. You can also, another thing you can do is to generate sales and conversions. We'll talk about that a little bit. Tap into a new target market. There's ways to do that. Some people, stick in their target market. Sometimes there's these outlayers of influencers that you can work with that are still in your target market, but they're just out there a little bit. Like, sometimes we've done stuff with fitness people, but, and then what happens, we also work with some lifestylers or some jet setters or people that are lifestyle that kind of are still on that fitness space. And we've seen some good successes with, like maybe you just want to grow your social media followership, right? That's one of your KPIs, one of your goals. Or you want to use the influencer content as a testimony or a social proof. Like I know with the guys over at Get Snow, they have these big sponsorships. They've worked with Mayweather. They've worked with all these big companies or these big individuals, and they've paid a healthy price to do that. The whole idea of that is now you're going to be able to use that picture on your promotion, on your website and your social proof, wherever that is, to be able to show that, hey, listen, I get these types of influencers that love my product or service, and you should love it as well. So most popular influencer marketing KPIs, once again, engagement, right? So there's a lot of softwares you can use. You can go and take a look at when somebody's responding to something or if they're writing something that's similar to that. So engagement is going to be important. Make sure when we talk about engagement isn't an emoji, right? So it's not an engagement. So take a look at comments, and before you work with influencers, look at the kind of content they've produced and look at the kind of comments people are writing and make sure if it's good or bad. That's important to be able to know that. Reach, obviously, you can look at the influencer can send you a report at the end to know how many people received or saw the promotions you did. Impressions, another one. Followers, more followers. Referral traffic, so you can look at your website and say, hey, from this, if you can work out something influencer where they put a certain link in their bio and they put link in bio and you can see how much traffic was driven from that. You got to set that up through Google Analytics or through a UTM code or something like that. And then sales and conversions, which is usually a lot of people are listening, hey, I want to convert some people, right? I want to be able to do that. But just know that we read a lot about influencer marketing. For every $1, you make $6.75. That's not every campaign, right? A lot of people don't talk about the 5 campaigns you had to do before you got there. Just know that just because you do one influencer campaign doesn't mean that one's going to crush. Doesn't mean it's not going to crush. But the idea of it is you're going to have to test like anything else when it comes to marketing. So effective measurements of ROI includes, qualitative and quantitative. So when we talk about qualitative, we're looking at more like sentiment and brand awareness. Once again, are very parallel. And so like, how do you measure that? So you can go through the comments of the influencer's posts, as I've talked about for past campaigns and for your current campaign. Look for brand mentions on social media. And like I said, I'll talk about some softwares to be able to help you with that. And then what to look for, the nature of the comments and the mentions, right? So, just because there's tons of comments doesn't mean the comments are good. It's important to go in and evaluate that and see what we've got. So this is Julia. This is one that went really, really, really well. So she had a campaign that she was putting out, and she put, "Hey, thank you so much for your updates. With your hypo. I had it 8 years ago." So anyway, she's talking about, she's being real. She's got some, I think she has a hyperthyroid, I believe. But anyways, the point of this is she's being very authentic. She's talking about things that are going on, and people are resonating with what she's got. Hey, that's awesome that you told us about your ailment, that you have some things you have going on. And once again, she's being very honest. She's being authentic, right? Was she paid for this post? Probably, but the idea of it is we're really hoping that she tried the product. She said, "Hey, it's a great product, and this is the reason I'm vouching for it," not because she was being paid or getting free product. Here goes one. This one's kind of infamous. This was Scarlett. Once again, not to talk bad about Scarlett, but this was something that it's just something the audience didn't resonate with. The issue is this: is that first of all, nobody really wakes up with 20 balloons from Valentine's Day. The issue is this: is if you'll see down there by the strawberries, those are supposed to be pancakes, and they're tortillas. And so, obviously it looks like, and so these people are writing stuff like, "You ain't fooling me. Those aren't pancakes, it's a pile of tortillas." Well, people kind of went off because of that, because once again, this isn't really authentic, because this is probably, I don't think she wakes up this way every morning that I know of. And then she kind of tried to make it a little better by saying those were pancakes, and they weren't. So anyways, the audience, her followers, did not like this and got a very negative review because of this. And so once again, not the way to go. And once again, they're writing some pretty bad stuff about it. It's, once again, social media can be an absolute darling, and can drive sales and be awesome. And on the other side of it, if it doesn't feel like it's authentic, it feels like you're being fake, they're going to call you out on it. So brand awareness, like how to measure that, looking for brand mentions on social media, like what to look for, the nature of the comments as we talked about. Do people talk about your brand or your product positively, right? What did they say? And then does your brand name come up in discussions about problems your products can solve? So that's what it really comes down to. Like, what is your product or service? What problem does that solve? That's really the biggest thing at the end of the day. If you have software as a service, if you have any product that you produce, you want to figure out, like, how are you the solution that everybody needs? Why is that? Like, figure out the pain point and figure out how you're the solution. So, some of the stuff that we look at for like brand mentions, or the softwares that we use is obviously BuzzSumo, Mention, Brand24, Social Bakers, and then Google Alerts. So these are all, Google Alerts is free. Each one of these have its own benefits. Like some of them have stronger searching capabilities, and some of them I use for different things. But these are all products that we've taken a look at that, at the end of the day, that these are all, you can go and it'll send you, like I actually get reports on a daily basis of how many mentions I've received for my name, for my competitor's name, for certain keywords. Once again, good stuff to set up to see if you have a campaign that was going, and if you had a huge influx of traffic and a great amount of people talk about the product because the sentiment was good, then that's obviously a good thing. So the quantitative measures like influencer marketing results is brand awareness, so it's that reach, engagement, and impressions. Sales or conversions, which is like clicks, conversion rates, revenue, referral traffic, or social media reach, which is like follower count. So like when you're talking about brand awareness, like what are we looking for? So many times, like you got to look at like how many times the influencer's post was shared, right? So that can be, once again, that can be either on Instagram, that can be, in a blog post, right? So you've seen a blog post that you can get, tons of people will be sharing it through social media and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways to make that happen. But brand awareness is going to be an important factor if that's one of your KPIs. And then what was the engagement rate of the post? Like ask the influencer to share their analytics. So, I've done a lot of keynote speeches in regards to influencer marketing, and outside of that as well, SEO and some other things, anything in the digital space. And it's incredible to me the amount of influencers I've talked with that don't provide reporting at the end. If you're a brand, you really want that reporting. You want to know how many clicks you got. You want to know that kind of stuff. The more reporting, the better, because you're going to need to take that and go to the higher ups and say, hey, this is what we got going on, and this was either a successful campaign or it wasn't a successful campaign, and why was that? An example of, this was Jared that did something for, obviously, Solo, the movie that came out. So there's a great picture of him and his kids, and they've got all the, cups and all the other fun stuff. And you'll see here, this is, he actually had a paid partnership with Star Wars movies. And this is important. I mean, there's, once again, we're talking about the FTC and disclosing. Make sure you're disclosing the partnerships that you have. It doesn't necessarily always have to be this way. I mean, you can also put hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, but make sure you do disclose something is going on there. There's a relationship there, so that, once again, it's a very transparent relationship. And this is a thing we're talking about, asking influencers to use branded content on Instagram or Facebook so they can review the analytics. When you have, I believe it's on Facebook, but when you do these kind of partnerships with an influencer, you actually can see the analytics because it's just shared analytics. I don't know if that's on Instagram. I think it's just on Facebook. But either way, you can go and take a look at those analytics as the influencer can as well. So for sales or conversions, like, what do you look for? So, I mean, obviously, how many people clicked on the affiliate link? So if you're doing an affiliate type deal where an influencer has a product or service and, they put the link in their Instagram bio, let's say Instagram as an example, they click on it and then they go to a landing page that has, the influencer on there and it has, here, click here, these are the products. Then obviously you'll know how many sales came directly from that affiliate link. How much revenue did you generate from this? So we had, John, the influencer, we did 10 influencer campaigns in a month. And it looks like John was the one that moved the needle the most because he did $1,000, $10,000, $20,000 in sales. And then we had, like, how much revenue was generated from this? Okay. How many people use the unique discount codes for the influencers to buy? That's where you do not necessarily an affiliate link, but you say, hey, it's going to be Shane 25, and anybody in my audience or any of my followers will get 25% off this software or off this product or whatever that is. And then how much obviously how much revenue was generated from this, and then how many people came to the website after seeing any influencers post. So once again, these are all things that you have to figure out on your side. What do you want to see out of this? What are your KPIs? What are we looking for so we will know that this was a successful campaign or not a successful campaign? So some examples of this was Peach Posh blog, but slow morning, slow reads are my favorite. After reading my, my wave ring, and then it has for the Pure Vita bracelets, which have had a lot of successes on influencer marketing. Use my code AlexDavey20. So there goes an example of a 20% off coupon. So she's just talking about some of the stuff she's reading. And talks, throws it out to her audience, and then her audience will say, oh, okay, this is great. It's awesome that you're reading that book. And hey, I want to get that book too, or I want to get that bracelet or whatever that is. And they can put in the 20%. And once again, very easy to go in and grab that code. And now it's great for your audience because it's beneficial for your audience to get a discount. And then this person also gets some kind of affiliate sales. And then Pura Vida bracelets will know exactly how many sales were driven in from this post. So tools that we use for easy qualitative analysis. So Grin is the number one that we use at this point. They've been awesome. And once again, they put up a great way to put campaigns in there, and you can see the numbers that are coming through. BuzzSumo is another one that can do, once again, that's more on the blogger side of things. Grin's going to be more on the influencer side of things. And then Group High is also a great platform that we've used in the past. And once again, it kind of brings the influencers and the bloggers and all that kind of stuff. Once again, however you're driving your product or service through these influencers can all be measured. So for me, the key takeaways. So, I've touched on this quite a bit, but no goals equals no ROI. So if you're doing a campaign, this is not only with influencer marketing, this is anything in life. If you don't have a goal, how do you know you made it to that goal? Like, how do you know that there was any return on investment? If your goal is to run a marathon, and you don't set up your goals, hey, I have to run 1 mile at this time, and I have to do this at this time, and I have to eat better, I have to do this, then how are you going to know you were successful? How are you going to know that you hit that pinnacle of doing this, running your marathon within 2 hours or whatever that number is, or whatever that goal is? Effective measurement equals is a qualitative and quantitative, right? So there's going to be direct numbers that you can look at, and there's also going to be qualitative stuff that you're going to look at where you're like, it's more of like, hey, like the overall reactions and things that happen online that you're going to have to make an assessment of like, hey, this was a positive campaign or not a positive campaign. So knowing your audience, extremely important, right? And knowing where they're hanging out. Evaluate influencers successfully. That's a big one. So there's softwares out there, and there's a lot of them you can use, but Grin is one of the ones that we use. And there's some other ones out there, like I said, that are good as well. What we do is then you can go in and take a look at influencers, because the idea of this is if you want to work with 10 influencers, you really should probably go through a whole list. You put in different keywords or tags. You go and you find the list, and maybe it's geographically driven or not. It doesn't really have to be. But my point is, let's say you want to work with 10, you look at 100, you go review the list, you have 25 that look good. What I do on my campaigns, because I want to have the touch point with the influencer, is I go and interview the influencers. I will physically interview them through a call and say, hey, what do you know about our company? What do you know about this? What do you know about that? Because you really want to make sure it's a good fit. If they go, well, I just want to make more money. Like, I just thought you guys were going to offer me more money than my other clients. And it's okay. That's not good for me as a brand. I want you to ask the right questions. I want you to know about my product. I want you to say, hey, you are the person that we want to partner with. And so that becomes that situation. You have to make sure that you're talking those influencers, because each one of those influencers are going to have a different view of what's going on, and you're going to have to make sure you guys are on the same page. Personalize your outreach messages. Once again, make sure you go in and talk with, go in and look at their profile and see what kind of content they create. And then you want to make sure the email that you send out to them is going to be somewhere that's going to be custom, whether you're going to, at least they understand that you looked into them and explained to them why it's going to be a good fit. And then building and long-term relationships. That's a really big thing with this is, influencer marketing. It's not just, hey, one post and hey, let's go on to the next influencer. The idea of this is you're really looking for the influencer that's moving the needle, and it's better for their audience and better for your brand if you continue to do that campaign with that influencer, assuming that things are going well. You just keep doing it over and over because it's repetition, it's frequency. The more times that they see you working with this influencer, the more apt they are going to be to go buy your product or service because they feel comfortable. The influencer is promoting you because they believe in your product, which influencers don't promote products you don't believe in. That's the keynote, right? Don't be authentic in regards to that. But so that's it, guys. This is it. If you guys have any questions, like I said, we can get those answers as well. I did want to give you guys my information. I'm going to leave this slide up here. Shane at Shane Barker is my personal email. If you guys have any questions about, influencer marketing or campaigns or anything like that, I've got some, once again, I have case studies that you guys can take a look at. But I also have my ebook that I wrote just a few years ago, still very, very relevant. If you go to shanebarker.com/influencer-ebook, you guys can download the ebook, or if you just put influencer marketing ebook in Google, you will see I'm #1 for that. And you guys can go and download the ebook. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me at any time.
Okay, thank you so much, Shane, for the detailed and insightful session. Guys, please use the comment section. We will answer as many questions as possible. Also, I think we have a couple of them already ready with their questions, Shane. I'll just read out to you. Padmini says, help us to get appropriate influencer marketer for schools and mobile stores. Okay. Okay. Going forward, there's also a question. Dennis, if you could explain the KPIs a bit more. Dennis would like to know what kind of KPI should one set for an influencer marketing campaign.
Yeah, so in regards to KPIs, I mean, really, the KPIs really depend on what you're looking for. Like, what would you, whatever you're going to, where your budget is, like, what would you think would be a winning campaign for a $10,000 budget? So that's what that's what the brand has to figure out is like, hey, if we're going to spend $10,000, what would we consider this a win? Is it, hey, we want to get at least $10,000 in sales, or maybe it's 20,000, or hey, we want to get, more mentions online. We want more people to talk about our product, or we want to get at least 50 shares of this, this funny video that we put out there. It really comes down to what you want as the brand, and you need to really look at that. Like, but it needs to be measurable. That's the key. It's like, it's not just hoping and going, yeah, and I hopefully get to this thing. Hopefully it works. And then the influencer goes, well, what do you think it was good? And like, I don't really know because I didn't really know what to expect. And you're like, oh yeah, me neither. And you're like, oh, it sounds good. Like, that's not it, right? The idea of this is like, hey, this is what our goals are. This is what we're shooting for. And do you think for this budget that's realistic? And then that way the influencer is on board and saying, hey, listen, if we don't get to that point, then what I'll do is I'll do an extra post at the end, or, hey, I understand that we really wanted to get to that number. What can we do to make this a win-win so that we get to that number, get to your KPI, your goal, and make sure you achieve that?
Great. So here, Patricia has a question for us. She asks, how important is SEO in connection with marketing? If I have to second my dollar on e-marketing, which is most effective? I mean, I think she wants to like how important SEO when it comes to influencer marketing campaigns. Yeah.
Yeah, so SEO, and I mean, it's funny. So I just did a webinar on this yesterday, actually. So when it comes to influencer marketing and SEO, I mean, I wouldn't do influencer marketing assuming that because you want to get better rankings in SEO. I mean, there are some parallels there. I mean, I would think that you want to do influencer marketing because you want to drive that right type of traffic to your product or your service. So it's really what you want to do is use those influencers to drive that traffic. From an SEO perspective, you can absolutely use influencer marketing because, influencers, obviously, they write about you on your blog. There's going to be a backlink to your product and service. If it's a high authoritative website, then that's going to be beneficial for you. The social sharing that happens online, there are some indicators that can push up your SEO a little bit as well. It's not number one, but really it comes down to backlinks. So the more influencers that actually talk about your product, and I'm not talking about like Instagram because those links are always being changed out. I don't think there's huge SEO value in that. There will be in a YouTube video where there's a link going back to your product or service. There will be in a blog post that happens or a mention that happens on, whatever, a news report website on some kind of a reporter that did a story on you. Those are all going to be very beneficial for SEO.
Great. So Kevin has a question from an influencer standpoint. He asks, what should influencers be doing to make themselves more attractive to companies looking for reach and engagement?
Yeah, the key to that whole thing is this. I mean, that's part of the class that I teach at UCLA is don't wait for brands to reach out to you. Just don't. You make a list of 10 or 20 brands that you want to work with, and you get a media kit together, and you get any past campaigns that you've done. You put something together and say, hey, Nike, I want to work with you guys. And this is a reason. And you have to realize if you're reaching out to Nike, you have to make sure you're probably that level of an influencer, right? So if you have like 9 followers or something, Nike probably is not going to respond to you, right? But the idea of this is you want to explain to them why they need to work with you, because there's so many brands that want to work with influencers, but they really don't know what to look for. They don't know how to find them. They don't know what the deal is. So if you go to them and say, listen, I see that you've worked with these influencers. I can tell you why I don't think those campaigns did as well because X, Y, Z. Or, you go to Nike and you say, hey, I see Adidas did these campaigns with these influencers. This is how I think we can do it, but it's going to be 10 times better. Let me explain why that is. And let me show you like the different things that we can do. This is a video that I did for XYZ company. And this is what we did here in the campaign here. We spent about $15,000, but we made $35,000. Like, educate the brand because the brand wants to know that. Like, brands will read my articles to figure out which influencers to work with, right? Because they want to be successful. Like, if this person knows how to move the needle with this company, they should know how to move the needle with my company. So don't wait for somebody. That's like me waiting on clients. Like, I don't wait for clients to come knock on my door. I get a good amount of them because of SEO and because of I'm out there and people see me and keynote speeches and stuff like that. But really at the end of the day, I'll go to a brand and say, this is why I want to work with you. And they're like, well, we've seen your articles and yeah, we'd love to work with you. Like, don't wait for somebody to knock on your door. You guys always want to be proactive and go knock on other people's doors.
Yeah. Shane, we have a few more questions. Disha has a question. I think what I can understand from a question is how to crack influencer marketing for a B2B business, because I think that's all the B2B brands find it a little difficult over there. So if you could just expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, B2B marketing from influencer marketing is a little bit more of a challenge, but it's not impossible by any means. I mean, as an example, I write for 100 and almost 120 different websites. That's Inc. and Forbes and Huffington Post. And the thing is that obviously we do B2B marketing, right? Or B2B, right? When it comes to, we talk about products and services and companies, and it's a little bit kind of like a PR, like influencer marketing play. But it's not impossible by any means. I mean, the idea of it is to get influencers, in whoever you think would be the perfect influencer for your product, right? For your business, where it can be another business that can actually just figure out how you guys are going to put that content together and how you guys are going to promote it. So it really comes down to who do you want to work with? How are you going to reach out to that company, right? And how is it going to be beneficial for both of you? And then coming up with that content and then be able to produce that content over time to be able to make it successful. So it is a little more tricky, but it's not impossible by any means.
Yeah. There's an interesting question here from Hannah. She asked, I noticed that the larger the influencer is, the less likely they will work on a campaign whose goal is to get sales or conversion. So what is your opinion and how would you go about that negotiation?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it really depends on, if the influencer isn't willing to go off of sales and conversions, I think what you're saying there is that it would only be commission based and there's no base for the influencer. So the issue with that is an influencer looks at it and says, okay, if it's going to cost me $1,000 to get my videographer to edit my content, my photography guy, and then I'm going to have to do my makeup, right? So they have these fixed costs. And if you go and say, hey, I would like to, offer you of my $20 t-shirt that I have, I'd like to offer you $10 per t-shirt, then the influencer's got to look at it and say, okay, if it's going to cost me $1,000 to break even, I have to sell 100 t-shirts, right? So do I think I'm going to sell 100 t-shirts just to break even? But my goal isn't to break even. So you have to look at it from the influencer standpoint of like, this is a lot of them, it's their business, it's their full-time thing. So if that's the deal, you need to say, okay, well, this is the deal. How much would it cost to produce that content? Well, it would cost $1,000. How about if I cover your $1,000, but I'll give you a little less of a percentage on the back end? What I would do as a brand, I would say, what do you think, how many shirts do you think you could sell? I think I could sell 100 shirts. Okay, great. And I'll give you a base of $1,000. But then on the other thing, we were going to split it 50-50 on the commissions. Let's do it, since I'm giving you a base, let's do it 30% there. So if you sell 100 shirts at $10, then you should get an extra $300. Whatever the numbers are. Those numbers are a little skewed. I'm just giving you as an example. But the idea is how do you make it a win-win, right? So when you go to these big influencers and say, hey, I just want to make this commission-based, they're going to say, yeah, but I have a fixed cost for my business. Like, why would I do that? Right. I have all the risk and you have all the benefit, right? Because if I don't sell anything, then you don't really lose anything. Right. Because that's the problem, is that you have to realize that how do you make it a win-win? That's the biggest thing about it.
Yeah. So we have a few more questions, Shane. I'll just quickly go about it. So Roland asks how to actually make influencer campaigns comparable with other campaigns like TV or banner campaigns. I believe he means how to measure the impact or the ROI.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to direct. I mean, because it's hard to say, hey, listen, this campaign that we did, influencer marketing, was better than what you guys did with a banner ad, right? Because I mean, it's two different audiences, two different crowds. Like, how long was the banner up? I mean, there's just a lot of variables to that. I mean, you can say, hey, I think what you have to explain to them is like, hey, if you think your audience is millennials between whatever 24 and 35, whatever the number is, right, age-wise, where do you think they're spending their time? Is it you think they're looking at more banners, or you think they're looking at more stuff on Instagram? And you need to educate them on where that audience is going to be at, right? And you can say, hey, listen, there's been, a lot of people don't read newspapers anymore. I mean, those are all stats that you can find if you're looking to validate why more of their audience is going to be online and particularly in your feed, and explain why that is. I think it's just an education thing. It's hard because it's hard to compare apples to apples in that situation, because you can't really do both, and they're just two totally different types of campaigns, I guess.
Okay, there seem to be a lot of questions here, Shane. I will just, guys, we will be taking 2 or 3 more questions at the max. So the last one, I mean, there are like a few remaining. I'll just go about it. Are there any influencer connection sites you've used, someplace that verifies influencers and helps companies find a good fit? There's a question from Haley.
Yeah, I mean, finding the right influencers is always the challenge. I'm trying to think of some of the names. There are a few webs. I mean, are you talking about actually trying to find influencers, like actually like a search, or places that have validated that they're real influencers? I'll make sure I answer that correctly.
Yeah, this is a question always even I had, like how to differentiate between fake influencers, because there's so many of them right now. It becomes quite difficult, right? Like how to understand whether their engagement is genuine, their followers are genuine.
This is the way you need to do it. I mean, it's no different than dealing with people that don't know how to do SEO but say they do. It's the same thing with the people that think they know how to do PPC but they don't. It's no different. So we talk about fake influencers and the people, oh, it's an epidemic. It's not an epidemic if you're asking the right questions, right? So if you're asking the questions like, what other campaigns have you done in the past? Can you show some analytics of things that you've done? What do you think that would be successful with a campaign that we would run? Can you give me some general ideas of what you think what we could put together there? I mean, the thing is And then like, hey, if you're selling t-shirts, like how many t-shirts do you think we could sell off of the campaign? What is the cost for, I mean, you ask them some questions like, what is the cost for us to put this campaign together? My budget is $10,000. Hey, for $10,000, we can do one YouTube video. We can do this, we can do this. And let me show you some results of stuff that we've done in the past. And the problem is most people run their campaigns off of how many followers an influencer has, and they're not asking the right questions. They're like, well, they have a high follower count, so we must get a lot of sales. That must happen because of that. And that's not always true. I've written maybe hundreds of articles about influencer marketing, and you can go and look at them and they will educate you, give you enough information on what to ask influencers. Download my ebook. That'll give you a lot of information. And then you get together your 5, 10, 15 questions, no different than you would if you were going to hire an SEO company. Do the research. There's free information out there. Google's absolutely beautiful. You put in these keywords and all kinds of articles pop up, and you can go and get those questions. And now you at least are educated on and asking educated questions when it comes to influencers to see if they're fake. Same thing with SEO people, same thing with PPC, any of that stuff. Like, so at least they know that, listen, this isn't this person's first time. We're not going to be able to fool them with, the stuff that we've done in the past or the lack of reporting, or you have to ask the right questions to be able to filter out the people that are real and that aren't real.
Yeah. Okay. I think this will be our last question. We have Padmini asking us, will location-centric influencers be more helpful for brand awareness, improve brand awareness?
So, I mean, I have a campaign that we're doing with Thumpcase right now. Look at thumpcase.com. I got some really cool, unique products. But what it is like these briefcases, and we put speakers inside of them. I have like cars. It's just crazy, crazy stuff. But the reason why I'm telling you about that is we have a campaign that we're putting out right now, and we're working strictly with influencers in the Sacramento area. And the reason why that is because my base is out of Sacramento, obviously LA as well because of UCLA. But and what we're doing, the reason why we're doing that is because we actually want to meet with the influencers physically and talk to them about the campaigns and see where they're at. And it's important, once again, for us to be able to see them. And we're giving them these thump cases that have speakers in these luggage cases. I mean, we do a lot of different ones, but the idea of that is, I mean, we're giving an influencer $700-800 case for free. Right. So what we want to do is make sure we have a great campaign. So we meet with them in person and say, hey, let's kind of put together that campaign. It doesn't have to be a local product, right? Anybody, anywhere could get one of these things, and it's a real kind of hipster, kind of DJ, kind of really cool product that people enjoy. You can have it out in your pool and you can put it down. It's a piece of luggage and it plays music, speakers and stuff. It's awesome. But my point of telling you that is we want to start locally because we want to figure out what kind of influencers are working, what kind of campaigns are working, and then we can take it to LA, we can take it to San Francisco, we can take it to Miami, we can take it to Denver, but we want to have more of a touch feel in the beginning because we're meeting with the influencers in person.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Okay, I think guys, we need to stop with them. We have to stop the questions right now. We'll be sending you the recording of the entire webinar. So if you have any questions, you can email it to us. We'll get it answered as soon as we can. Or also, I'm sorry.
There's one more thing I wanted to touch on too. I actually am, and because I know a lot of people are asking, I'm kind of looking at the questions. We actually are doing a workshop in San Francisco on March 21st. So if anybody's in the area, and what we're doing is a workshop to show brands how to work with influencers. It's going to be a hands-on workshop that we're doing on March 21st. So if anybody's interested in that, I know there's a lot of questions that weren't answered. We are having that, and just reach out to me and I'll give you more information on that.
Great. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending the session. Also, you can follow us on Twitter. We will be coming up with our next webinar in the month of March. So till then, thank you, Shane. Thank you so much for taking time out. This was a great, insightful session. It looks like everyone thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly learned a lot from it. So yeah, I think that'll be it.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time and sign up once again. Thank you guys for putting this together. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shane. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this.
All right.
Until next time, take care. Goodbye. Bye, guys.